But it's different for everybody. In any case, my own health issues sort of got me realizing that time doesn't last forever, and I really wanted to have an impact very quickly. And so what I ended up doing was really just focusing on the stuff that I enjoyed doing, which was really the engineering side. I stopped doing all the pre-med stuff, which was controversial with my family, but really just focused on engineering. And I decided that I wanted to start a business. When I was a senior in college, I was getting a lot of contracts, and I began getting so many contracts to do just engineering work that I just hired a couple of my friends. A lot of people advised me against this. A lot of people were sort of, because I had an opportunity to get a number of jobs after college, which are steady, non-risky, well-paying jobs. I ended up not doing that and just went with this consulting company. And I think ultimately, if you look at a lot of people who do things that are different and do things that are outside the norm, they live lives that were outside the norm. So if you are sort of going along with everybody, if you care about what everybody else cares about, and if you are all worried about getting a job, you're all worried about getting to school, you're all worried about going to grad school, you're all worried about getting the next, then your life will be like everybody, because that's just how it goes. So if your plan is to do something different, then you actually have to do different things. And I know that sounds like a tautology, but it is something to think about, because most people want things to be different, but they're unwilling to go through the process, the painful process of actually taking risk and doing somewhat crazy things. In any case, I started this because I built it, basically. I needed it, so I built it. That's all. So.
What would you say would be your number one advice for young visionaries that have an idea and want to get it going?
What would be my number one advice for young visionaries who have an idea and want to get it going? I think that my basic advice I have is that you shouldn't be afraid. Basically, like if you don't start, you're never going to get anywhere. And I didn't know where I was going in the first place. Just starting the company and getting over that fear made a big difference. So I think if you have a degree from university, or if you already have a job or something and you're an employable person, chances are you're going to be an employable person and you're probably not going to end up living in a cardboard box. So that being the case, there's not all that much risk, and getting started on something and trying it might lead you to where you're actually going. I think that there's one word you said in formation of your question where you said visionary. I think it's difficult to determine whether you're a visionary or not. I think that's probably something that's retrospective. You probably don't know if you're a visionary, not that you're saying you did, but until after the fact. So it's probably best to think you're kind of trying to start something interesting and not assume that it's the most important or most correct, because that might be completely wrong. It might just lead you to where you're actually headed. Yeah?
Did you face any issues while running your company in terms of like Islamic issues, like for example?
Yes.
Did you ever have the urge to go to one of those jobs that was like well paying and secure, or did you feel like taking the risk was worth it? When you got married,
So I actually did. I did, but I guess I felt like taking the risk was worth it. I had a job offer out of college, and I was running my own really small company, and I decided I wanted to run a small company. And then I did have a well-paying secure job at Sony Pictures for about 2 years, and I got really bored and I wasn't happy. So, yeah, that was basically it. I didn't really think about that too much. Because as I said, I figured if I ever needed to get a job, I could. And so I should not do it unless I needed to, unless I had to. And fortunately, most of the time, whatever I was doing well enough where I didn't really have to, even if things were tight. And I wasn't forced to. Yes?
What are some mistakes that you have made or you've seen people make in making a startup that you think the second time around could have been avoidable?
So, mistakes. I think there's a few things. I think number one, sticking with something for too long when it's not working is probably a big mistake. There's different schools of thought on this, because there's some startup stories where it's we worked on this for 5 years and then finally it worked and thank God we stuck with it. I don't really believe in that school of thought. I think that ideas and companies should have momentum. If they're good, they should have their own momentum. You shouldn't have to be pushing them all the time. So I started a number of things. My previous two companies prior to AdMob, I felt like I was always pushing. You know what I mean? Like they weren't going anywhere. Like I would sign up. If I advertised, people would sign up. If I stopped, nobody would sign up anymore. I'd advertise again. But with AdMob, it sort of grew on its own. It had its own momentum. So it was going downhill, not in a bad way. It was like a vehicle going downhill instead of going uphill, right? And so even if I just left it alone and didn't look at it, it would continue to proceed on its own. If you don't have an idea with momentum, not that it has to have an issue quick, like that fast, but if it doesn't get momentum somewhat quickly, it might be the wrong idea. And so pivoting to a different idea or not getting so married to one thing is probably one thing I would say. The other is be very, very careful about who you work with. Because in the beginning you can do, I was really lucky. Every business I started prior to AdMob, not everyone, some of them had partners and other people involved, and starting it, that's really helpful in some ways, but you can also have confusions and fights and other issues. And so doing that all on my own was, it solved all those issues. And if you are going to work with partners, you need to make sure that you really know them and you know what they would be like if things went really well or really badly. Because in both of those extreme situations, people change. Probably more fights happen when things go well than when they go bad. Yeah.
Earlier on, you said that people who do things outside the norm and live lives outside the norm.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of wanted you to elaborate on that in terms of what do you mean, just not sort of going into the path of the standard way of doing things, or just sort of thinking differently?
Yeah, people think you're crazy when you're doing. So I was at business school and I dropped out of UC after half a year. And they all thought I was crazy. And then I was at Wharton. I wasn't everybody was all worried about business school and clubs and jobs and internships, and I ended up just spending my time working on this business. And they all thought I was crazy too. And then I dropped out, and that was crazy too. And even not getting a job after college was a little crazy. So basically, all I'm trying to say is, you don't have to do this. I'm not telling all of you go be insane. What I'm telling you though is that if you want an abnormal outcome in life, you have to do abnormal things. That's all that I'm trying to say. In other words, if everybody's doing this, everybody's worried about getting into med school, and you're also worried about getting into med school, you probably will have a life like everybody else who gets into med school, and that's cool. If that's what you want, that's good, because that's the path you're going down. But if that's not what you want, then you shouldn't be worrying about that. There's a reason a number of these, lots of people who've done amazing things, at least in the business world, have had really strange paths, right? So, not the Bill Gates stories and whatever. And there's lots of people who drop out of school and completely fail in life and are a big disaster. So that's the rest. It doesn't automatically mean you're going to get anywhere, but they took an abnormal path. And so, that's all that I'm saying. And that's really where the risk is, because it could be abnormally bad or abnormally good. It doesn't have to be good, but it won't be normal if you don't do normal things.
Last question? Oh, I guess.
Questions?
Last.